Said we broke all of your commandments. We played the harlot. We did you so wrong, so wrong. We committed adultery. And for doing this, said we failed as a nation. Said we broke your law while you was long suffering and being patient. Father, I'm sorry. I'm speaking for Israel. Forgive our old Father what they did. Father, I'm sorry for Israel. Forgive our old Father what they did.
Yeah. With my crown uncovered, face to easy. Collapse on my paper knees. No food in my belly, yes, I pray for you. Pray for me. And we both be praying for our ancestors. From the past even on to the present. We still don't know no better. Better we playing with the Most High. Toward our brethren in the evil lie. And when we speak of the nation needing peace, they be like, why? Did you really repent, brother? Then where that's at right now? Repent. One finish. Once you did it, now it's a lifestyle.
Shalom, 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 Yisrael. Thanks, my man. This is Yom Shel Keforah, Day of Atonement. Yom Shel Keforah, on what they call the 2nd of October, 2022. I'm telling you, this is going to be, these fall feast days is leading us into some dangerous times right now, Yisrael. Please take your breaths seriously. So we're going to talk about the Day of Atonement. And here we did all this talking for 3 to 4 months about the law and about the proper labeling of it. And then I'm going to talk about atonement and why we keep it. Well, of course we do. And we're going to talk about that. Just to do a quick review about what led us up to here. We talked about the law, how the law equals love, and love equals Yahweh Shua. And Yahweh Shua equals his image. You know you do not see him. You know he's not coming down from the throne, coming to look at you and talk to you and you to serve him. But he does throw through his image. And who is his image? You. Me. We. We are him on earth. We are his image. See, the thing about the law, and keeping the law, horizontal righteousness leads to vertical salvation. That's basically what it is. Horizontal righteousness leads to your vertical salvation. But the accuser likes to segment us with liberalism, separating us by the false machinations of color, has male against female, has creed against creed, even ageism, sexism, class, financial classes, different cultures, hating different peoples. And all these things distract us from what he's really doing behind the scenes. One thing all these different peoples, all of us have in common is the law. You can get two men on an island and they're going to have a law between them. There will be law. Wait a minute, you can't just walk over here and smack me upside my face. You are born. You are born. We are created with a desire for order. And law is order. Since that is the common thread between all breathing things on the earth, including animals, then that is the one element which is a constant. That's the one, it's not a variable. That is the one constant that Hasatan is going to use at the last day to deceive the whole world. Something that is endemically, spiritually in our DNA from the day one of creation. So that means we must be improperly, there's an improper image in our mind about what law is, if that's the case, because we know the law is beautiful. We talked about how Yahweh meets us where we are. He does not come at you the way he came at David, King David. He does not approach you the way he approached Abraham. He doesn't approach you the way he approaches your wife. Yahweh meets each of us where we are. He is a personable, real Savior for each individual person on the earth. Unique. We are each unique, and he approaches us in our unique way. His eyes are 10,000 times brighter than the sun. Nothing gets past him. Whatever soul sows, it will reap. Yahweh is not mocked. So there's no getting over. There's nobody just getting by. I know when I was in Marine Corps, I try to just be quiet and not stand out. And then you can get by with some stuff if you just don't get the drill instructor's eye. That's not so of Yahweh. Psalm 18 to verify that. Psalm 18, 24 to 26. Psalm 18, 24 to. I'm saying this for a reason. Therefore, Yahweh has recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands, in his sight. With the merciful, you will show yourself merciful. With a blameless man, you will show yourself blameless. With the pure, you will show yourself pure. With the devious, you will show yourself to be shrewd. You see, with the devious, Yahweh shows himself to be shrewd. The way you come at him is the way you're going to get him. That's what he's saying. And why do I say that? We'll talk about that. But we talked about how the bottom line about this horizontal relationship leading us into our vertical relationship, how the signature scripture I went to was Matthew 25, 31 to 46. Because here we have the delineation of the sheep on the right and the goats on the left. Now, the only constant, there were no variables of who went to the right and who went to the left, was how they treated the poor, the disenfranchised, the marginalized, the ones that we look down on, like the Samaritan, the ones we disregard, the ones we overlook, the ones we pass over. So did Yahshua not know what he's talking about? Did he not get the memo about keeping the 600 plus commandments? Because those who went to the right had nothing to do with anything else other than how they treated people. And they said, well, Master, when did we do all that? We just have a relationship with you. We love you. We just doing what we're supposed to do. We keeping the law, keeping the commandments. Yeah, you did keep the commandments. But in doing that, you gave that woman $10. You cut that man's lawn. You helped people along the way. You didn't do it to keep score. You just did it in your heart. And the goats on the left said, we ain't see you doing that. We kept the commandments. Yeah, you did. But you walked past that man. A Samaritan had to do your job. You went to the temple knowing all these commandments. That Samaritan don't know any of the commandments. He just knew that man needed help. And you walked right past him. So did Yahshua get something wrong? Does he not know what he's talking about? I mean, you tell me he let people go into his kingdom and live forever based on how they treated people? So am I getting something wrong, or are you getting something wrong? Because those on the right just treated people right. That's why they on the right. And that's the only reason why they're on the right. That's the only thing that came up in the conversation. There was nothing else in the conversation. Nothing else. This is why Eob, remember Eob, not a Hebrew, not circumcised, has no covenant, no legal covenant from Sinai with Yahweh. Yet why did Yahweh say the man was so righteous? Said he testified of the man being righteous before Hasatan and all of the heavenly hosts. Well, go to Eob 29. And we talked about this, about how Job being righteous. And we go to Job 29. Read the whole chapter. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start at verse 7. He says, and read the whole chapter. This is what Job did on a horizontal level that caused Yahweh to say he was so righteous. When I went out to the gate by the city, when I took my seat in the open square, the young men saw me and hid, and the aged ones arose and stood. The princes refrained from talking and put their hand on their mouth. The voice of nobles was hushed, and their tongue stuck to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard, then it blessed me. And when the eye saw, then it approved me, because I delivered the poor who cried out, the fatherless and the one who had no helper. The blessing of a perishing man came on me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. That sounds like Yahweh. Yahweh says that. My justice was like a robe and a turban. That sounds like Yahweh talking. I was eyes to the blind, and I was feet to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and I searched out the case that I did not know. I broke the fangs of the wicked and plucked the victim from its teeth. Sounds like David. And it goes on and talks of all these great things he did to people. This is why Yahweh himself, out of his own mouth, from his throne, testified to wicked Hasatan and the heavenly host that this was the most righteous man on earth. By doing what? By being circumcised? By wearing seats? No. By how he treated the people that came through his territory. Matter of fact, he went out to the people, to the square, to the courts, to see who needed help. Because there was no government checks and government cheese going out. There was no Biden bucks. It was Eob, the richest man in the land. And people needed stuff. They were either going to starve or they had to come through him. He was the government. Am I missing something? I know I'm not. This brother is breaking down the law in the proper way because Hasatan has put the wrong image in your head of what the law is. So, why are we keeping Yom, Shel, Keforah? Now, we still segueing into that. I hear you out there saying, no, the Ten Commandments. Wait a minute. The Ten Commandments were eternally, always to be kept. They have nothing, the commandments have nothing to do with the law. There's two separate things. Remember, you're speaking the language of slavery. The language I'm speaking now, I got because my forefathers were enslaved. That's why I'm speaking English. That's why you speak English. That's why your mama did, and your grandmama did, and your great-great and great-greats, because we got this language after we got out the boat into this land. This is a language of slavery. It's meant to keep you in slavery. That's why Yahweh for Christians uses original words to give you original truth. So, the law, the commandments will always be kept. You tell me, okay, you tell me this. At what time ever in the history before Moses now was you allowed to have another Elohim before Yahweh? When could you blaspheme his name? He created the Shabbat at creation. On the seventh day, he said he rested. There was no Moshe. At what time before Moses came down from Sinai was it okay to curse your mama and slap your father? At what time could you lie and you didn't sin? When could you covet? When could you steal and murder? So obviously, these commandments have zilch, nothing, nada. Whatever language you want to use to do with the commandments of Yahweh that were given from Mount Sinai, the 600 plus commandments. There's nothing to, there's two different things there. Because it was always wrong. You know it had to be wrong to the Ten Commandments were before Moses, because how did he judge Nineveh? Wait a minute. How did Cain get judged for his offering? What based on what? How was Cain wrong for offering up fruits and vegetables? Based on what? Think, Yisrael. Think. What did Sodom and Gomorrah do wrong? They had no covenant with Yahweh. Obviously, there's an eternal law, and it's through that law, that this world, just like the antediluvian world, Yahweh destroyed the entire creation. He destroyed all his creation for breaking a law sans Moshe. In other words, with no Moses. Ain't no Moses nowhere. And he judged the world, killed everything. Except those who was in his son, the T-ball, the ark. And at 2.0, this time it's going to be with fire, judging on the same thing. Matthew 25:31-46. What you have done to my image, you have done to me. What you have not done to my image, you have done for me. That's why you go to the left and get burned forever, or you come over here to the right and sit with me. That is it. Am I missing something? I know I'm not. Then why are we keeping these appointed times? Yehonathan Dawid. Why are you keeping these appointed times? Law and order are the ingredients of creation. Yahweh created order out of chaos. In Genesis 1:1, he says, let the creation be full of the knowledge of me. Now, your English Bible says, let there be light. The Hebrew means, let the creation be full of the knowledge of me. Because you know it was not physical light, because it was still dark for 3 more days. So you know it wasn't physical light. So Yahweh instituted the number one. You know when you buy a food product, it has on the label, it has on the side the ingredients that's in the food. So the first ingredient in this product of creation was the knowledge of Yahweh. And what's the second thing he did? He instituted relationship. How did he do that? By creating time. He said the evening and the morning was the first day. That started time. Now Yahweh came before time. He's outside of time. But he's eternal. How can something created be equal to Yahweh? He created time. He segmented things. And he created the appointed times. He started patterns. Patterns and time for what? For an appointed time to meet with him for the revelation of him. How do you get revelation with him? Relationship. If you have a rolled up rug, you get it from a secondhand store. You cannot know everything about that rug unless you unfurl it. It could be $1,000 hitting up into the last creak of it that was lost, and you wouldn't know until you unfurled the whole thing. And then it came out at the end. And if you just unfurled half of it, you might say, no, that's too frayed, it's too worn, it's too stained, and say, that's okay, and you roll it back up. But had you rolled the whole thing out, saw that G, that G money there, you would take that rug, you're like, ooh, roll that thing back up. And don't let the man see yourself. Yeah, I want this. You sure? It's going to be $10. Yeah, okay, all right, here's 50, here's 20. Because you know what's in that whole rug, you unfurled it. That's how Yahweh is. You cannot sit here and know Yahweh. It takes relationship. It takes an unfurling. So he gave us time. Bless Yahweh. You should wake up and say, praise Yahweh for time. He gave you evening, morning, and then he gave you appointed times. He gave us, he established patterns. You missed it when he said that he came to Adam in the cool of the day. Now, once again, language of slavery says cool. But in Hebrew, it says Ruach. It's the spirit of Yahweh. Yahweh came to meet with Adam and Eve at the appointed time. But they were a little busy sinning. They were tied up talking to the serpent. The record says Yahweh came at the appointed time. He came at the cool of the day. They were supposed to meet with him at that time. It's an appointed time. To do what? To talk with the man who created you. You're learning of him. You're perfect, but you're not complete. Remember, you're not complete till you fulfilled your purpose. Perfect and complete is 2 different things. A tree is perfect, but it's not complete unless a man eats off of it. And that's what the apple tree is created for, to produce apples for man. So a tree has not completed its purpose, is not complete. And a man is not complete unless he's produced a child. Y'all, the first commandment, since you love commandments so much, ever given to the creation was to be fruitful and multiply. That was the first commandment ever given to the creation. So Yahweh created on Genesis 1:5 time and patterns. And then in Genesis 3:8, he came to Adam and Eve who were busy sinning. In the cool of the day, that was an appointed time. So we keep the appointed times because they are given to us as a revelation to him. You could be doing other things, but you think you want to keep the appointed times. See, it's just like this. No, you're not going to be saved keeping appointed times. The thief on the right of the tree to Yahweh, did he keep any appointed times? You know, a child who was aborted, did they keep the appointed times? Child who was murdered. Somebody who was born mentally challenged in a nursing home or somewhere in the corner somewhere, did they do all this? No. This is why ultimately it's all about Yahweh, who knows the heart, and he meets us where we are. If you are able to keep the appointed times, I think you want to do that in the cool of the day. It's just like this. Now, your parents having an anniversary. You don't know nothing. You're 4 years old. Or 2, whatever. You just got out of your pamper. You don't know about no anniversary. Then you 3, 4 years old. All you know is every certain man seems like for some reason you always end up grandma's house for like a few days. You don't see mommy and dad for a while. You see grandma. You love them. You happy, but you don't see mom and dad for a couple of days. And then all of a sudden you see mom and dad come back. Dad smiling and happy, all bright. Mom smiling, looking kind of tired. And you, hey, okay, I'm back home. And mom and dad. And then the next year, 5, 6 years, as we get older, you say, oh, this is the time mom and dad got married. This is how I got here. You don't know all the details. And Yahweh, if he told you all the details about him, you wouldn't understand it anyway. Just like you can't tell your little 6-year-old daughter all the details of how she got made. You can tell her everything scientifically and she will not understand. It's inappropriate. And she's not mature enough to understand it. Now, add a 1 in front of that 6, then maybe you can have a discussion. Trying to make a point about the appointed times. So now you're 10 years old. You definitely know, hey, I'm going to grandma's because dad ready to take mom out. This is the time that they had their anniversary. I'm going to be ghost. I'm gone. I ain't gonna see them. Dad gonna come pick me up from grandma. He gonna be smiling and happy. Mom gonna be smiling and tired looking. I'm back with mom and dad. Every anniversary. This time, now you know what the anniversary is. Now you're 15 years old. You probably got a few dollars in your pocket. Now you gonna start buying mom and dad gift cards. You start giving, and then when you grown, you buying serious gifts. When you big, there's no law nowhere in that anywhere about you acknowledging your parents' anniversary. But you do it because you love them. You know they love each other, and that's how you got here. You know how special it is. So you out at Macy's, Hex, whatever's out there, Home Depot, whatever, getting something for your parents, acknowledging them on that appointed time, their anniversary. It'll behoove you to do that. It will behoove you to meet with Yahweh at his appointed times. Had Adam and Mother who had done that, they wouldn't have been up in the serpent's face. They'd have been where they supposed to have been, meeting with Yahweh. The thing about it is, I keep talking about Matthew 25, 31 to 46, the sheep and the goats, but it's one story. It's a narrative that's seamless. It's your enemies that made this Bible and segmented with books and chapters and verses. Chapter 24, the discussion talks about the last days. Master, when are these last days going to be? And he starts discussing the last days. Then you get to so-called chapter 25, talks about the 10 virgins. Virgins now, what man don't want a virgin? So we're talking about purity. We're talking about bruise. All right? 10 virgins. 50% of them didn't make it. Half. Why? Relationship. If they had intimacy means intimacy. If they had intimacy to the groom that was coming, they would have been ready. They would have been ready for the appointed time. So these appointed times helps you with your intimacy. They help you to recognize the anniversary, the appointed time that you want to be there. You don't think you need to legally be there, then fine. Particularly the spring appointed times. Because the spring appointed times all speak to the first coming of HaMashiach, which have already happened. So if you want to be technical, hey, you don't have to keep them. I suggest you do, because it's just like you not recognizing your parents' anniversary, and here you are sitting up there with your feet on the table watching the football game, knowing good well mom and dad had an anniversary day, and you don't even recognize it. Now, the fall appointed times, which we're in now, speaks to the second coming of Hamashiach, which have not happened. So we keep the spring time appointed times as a reflection, as a memorial. And we keep the fall appointed times because it had not happened yet. This Day of Atonement, I'm going to give you a scripture about what hasn't happened yet, a reason why we want to recognize Yom, Shel, Keforah. So we know that the wise brides were ready, had their oil lamps trimmed and full and ready, and they came in to meet the groom at the appointed time because they had a relationship with him that mattered. Remember, now when Moshe, whom we love, came down from Mount Sinai with these commandments, this was the Kiddushin portion of our marriage relationship with Yahweh. I had a whole, at least one segment, maybe two, about the process of a Hebrew wedding. The beginning is called Kiddushin. In English, we call it the betrothal period. It's just like Yosef and Miriam. She was pregnant. He's like, how I get pregnant? We haven't slept together. We haven't been together. And he was going to put her away because legally he was betrothed to her, even though they never touched one another. That's how it is with the Hebrew wedding. The process is you are legally bound to that other partner, even though you have not slept together. As a matter of fact, you're not supposed to. That's called the Kiddushin period. When Moshe came down with the 10 Commandments, that was Kiddushin with Yahweh. We have, to this day, are married to Yahweh, but we have not consummated with him. That's the second portion of the marriage. Right now, we are in the Kiddushin phase. We are married to him, but we have not consummated. That's going to happen at the fall feast. That's going to happen after the Feast of Tabernacles. That's when he comes again. That is why this is important. Because that's when we are going to consummate with the Most High Yah. Right now, we have not. That's all the spring appointed times. The fall appointed times is our intimate relationship with Yahweh. Do you think you need to keep them? I think you'd be wise to do so. He says in John 14:1-3, I go to prepare a place for you. And he's going to come back. But the 5 foolish virgins now, they mean these are Hebrews, Shebrews, true and through, was not ready. Because what happens is, in the traditional ancient Hebrew wedding, the man goes on a journey, goes away to his father's place. He builds a home attached to his father's home that he and his new bride is going to live in. And there's a whole year process that he's away. In the meantime, the bride is getting things ready, preparing for him when he comes back. We talked about this with Rahab, with the linen she was preparing for her dress. This woman had faith. One of the most righteous women in the history of the world, a whore. Rahab, in hope and promise, had that linen on her roof. And Salmon, one of the Hebrews, she saved under that roof. They end up being her husband. The Messiah ends up coming through her. So a wise bride will be preparing for the groom for that whole year before he comes back. This is why we're keeping these times, these appointed times. The foolish bride goes out and goes shopping, gets in debt, has parties, goes to the club, flirting with the guys. Now, if she's still a virgin, she ain't going to do nothing with them. Because remember, the 5 foolish virgins, they were virgins. But still, the man goes home with dirty thoughts. Yeah, I didn't get it, but I know how I can get it next time. So she's flirting with the men. She's starting new classes in school. For what? Your groom's come back. You ain't going to be there. Why are you taking new classes? Why are you making loans out, getting in debt? Why are you being a foolish Hebrew? Living in the world, being amongst those who live on the earth. Like Revelation talks about those who live on the earth. And those are Hebrews, mistaking the commandments and mistaking their relationship with Yahweh, and they're enmeshed in the cares of this world and not in a relationship with Yahweh Shua. So when he returns, when the groom returns, they will not be ready. And we're talking about Hebrews. Hebrews failing Yahweh in their daily relationships and failing Yahweh in these appointed times. Leviticus 23:26. Now we're going to talk about this appointed time. Leviticus 26. So I hope we got that clear of why we're doing this, why we're keeping it, because we know that we're not keeping no commandments to get into the heaven. We are using them for our crowns, actually. We talked about that, how you get crowns. But those sheep on the right kept the commandments. But they kept the commandments, they kept the 10. Now, I don't mean you can't wear your seats. I don't mean that's, but we know that all things are in proper place, in order. They don't mean go out there and eat with all your shrimp baskets and all that stuff. They don't mean that. Remember, relationship. That's going to tell you, Yahweh meets you where you are in Psalm 18. Wherever you are, your heart, he knows your heart, even though we don't know our own wicked heart. Leviticus 23:26-32. And it reads, when I cut off your... Wait a minute. Oh, let me not do that again. I'm always going the wrong place. Okay, 23. I'm at 26. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, also the 10th day of the 7th month will be the day of atonement. It will be a Kodesh convocation, because you will afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And you will do no work on that same day, because it is a Yom Shel Keforah, to make atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. Because any person who is not afflicted in soul on that same day will be cut off from his people, and any person who does any work on that same day, and that person I will destroy from among his people. Sounds pretty serious. You will do no manner of work. It will be a statute forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. It will be to you a Shabbat, a solemn rest. You will afflict your souls on the 10th day of the 7th month. From evening to evening, you will celebrate your Shabbat. And atonement this year is on the 7th. Okay? It's on the 7th at sunset. Now, key elements of the Day of Atonement. It is a Shabbat. It is on the 10th day of the 7th month. And you are to afflict your souls. Now, let's talk about this word affliction. In Hebrew, the word is na. It means to be bowed down or afflicted. Key word about affliction is about physical prostration. You are to be bowed down and afflicted. That's what na means. It does not mean fasting. Fasting, the Hebrew word for fasting is som. And som means fasting or a fast. But if you're going to afflict your soul, if you're going to na, I think you better som. Because the word about na is prostration and bowing down. Let me see you bow down. You got a whole day of afflicting yourself with a full gut. Now the processes that goes through the body of eating goes on for days. I can't see you eating big old steak sub, mashed potatoes and gravy, green beans, and drinking a Fanta grape soda, and then say, oh, now it's sunset, let me go ahead and keep atonement. With all that processes going on in your stomach, all that gas, having to leave your supplication place, go to the bathroom, poop it out, poop and come back, going to get more gas, got to keep going back and forth, stinking up the joint. I think you want to som. You'd be better off fasting. The thing about atonement, it is beating of the chest, is humility because of a recognition of your failure in relationship. It's a falling short of perfection. It's a missing of the mark. So we humble ourselves before the Most High Yahweh Shua. We told Him for the sacrifice He made for us. You're not going to stand up straight with your arms crossed across your chest, your chin is up, or your fist on your waist. It is a humble posture, a humble position before the perfect man of whose image you are. So the command is not to tzom, is not to fast. If you're like one of the wise virgins, having an intimate relationship, or like a more mature child who understands their parents' wedding anniversary than an immature child who doesn't understand it, you want to tzom. You want to fast. I know I can't see myself with a full stomach or having eaten even just hours ago with all the processes going on in your stomach and then call myself being in atonement. You know, the longest I fasted was quite close to 80 hours. You talk a little bit more than 3 days. And even then at that point, still there was voiding. I still had moments of voiding, of going to the bathroom. I mean, you got, I don't know how many feet of small bowel. I don't know how many feet, 70, 80 feet of bowel. And then you have your large bowel. And all that activity going on of taking out the water and the nutrients out of the bowel to send it out through your body for energy, going from, if you remember your basic biology, going from adenosine triphosphate to adenosine diphosphate. And then that one phosphate is energy to perform, to act. So you go from ATP to ADP. That's what the body is going through. It's a very volatile thing your body's going through. That's why fasting helps heal the body, because it's very volatile what goes on in your body when you're eating. And then you're going to be in atonement going through all that, with all that activity going on. You got to go pee, you got to go poop, you're passing gas, you're going back and forth. I think you want to tzom. It's all about spirit versus flesh enterprise. That's what it's all about. Now I said I wanted to talk about how the fall feast point to what hasn't happened yet. The spring feast is a memorial to what already has happened. So the fall feasts are more relevant. If for some reason I don't suggest it, that you say, I just don't think, because of these commandments and laws, what they mean, what Yohanan is teaching, I don't think I really need to be keeping all these feast days and all that stuff. If you say, then maybe you can do that with the spring ones. You still shouldn't, because they speak to what has already happened. But just as a mature child supports their parents in their anniversary, you support this because you need it. The fall feasts are more relevant. These have not happened yet. Let's read from Zechariah 12, 9 through 14. Zechariah 12, 9 through 14. And it reads, "It will be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Yerushalayim." Talk about the day of deliverance of Yehuda, okay? Mourning, and about mourning for the prince. "And I will pour on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Yerushalayim the ruach of grace, of chain, and supplication. Then they will look on me whom they have pierced. Yes, they will mourn for him, as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him as one grieves for a firstborn." I know about that firsthand. I know how that feels. I know intimately how that feels. In that day, there will be a great mourning in Yerushalayim, like the mourning of Hadar Rimon in the plain of Megiddo. And the land will mourn every family by itself, the family of the house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of the house of Nathan by itself, and their wives by themselves, and the family of the house of Lawi by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of Shimei by itself, and their wives and by themselves, all the families that remain, every family by itself, their wives and themselves. Did you get that? Did they say anything about anybody outside the covenant? Are these the Goy? Is this the Goyim? Or are this Yahweh's people? The Hebrew people under covenant with a revelation of relationship with him. Mourning. This is a day that has not happened yet. This is in the future. Everything living who has a relationship with Yahweh will be in mourning of, it says, of the whom they have pierced. Yet you know, I didn't pierce Yahushua. But did I? Yes, I did. Before the foundation of the world, he knew me. He saw me. He saw my foolishness and my harlotry. He saw my sins that I would never want to share with you. And for me, for that, he died. I need no other argument. I need no other that is it. He died. He resurrected. He's preparing a place for me right now. John 14, 1-3. And I'm going to be I am a wise virgin waiting for him. Because he's going to return. In the meantime, you will afflict yourself, and if you're smart, if you're wise, if you have experience in your relationship with him, you will You will fast. So you can bow down and bend over while having this fat stomach growling. Because if you don't, then so be it. Because this book, this record says everyone in covenant with him will mourn. Because we all are guilty of the reason why he was pierced. Every one of us are guilty of why he was pierced. You know, I did this before. I decided to do it again today. Reading from my second book here, Yahushua, I'm Original Words of Original Truth. Reading pages 164 to 172. Hopefully I'll have time. 164 to 172. So bear with me. Talking about Yahushua as the bride. Now remember, we are the bride. We're supposed to have on this pure linen. We talk about the righteousness of linen. And we're going, and that's a deep lesson you got there, and I don't know if you fully appreciate it. The righteousness of linen. Because Yahushua had linen. He wore linen. We're going to read that in Scripture. We're talking about how Yahushua juxtaposed himself for us. We deserve to be on that tree. We deserve, each one of us, for our own sins, to be slain and beaten. Yahushua is brought before the Ha Kohen Gadol, the chief priest Caiaphas, and the Sanhedrin 3 hours before the dawn to tire him for confession. Yahushua was offered to speak for himself and confess, but he did not. Yahushua faces false witnesses of treachery. Consider that Yahushua was offered twice. The second time was on the Mount of Olives, on the Tree of Life. But his first offering, as an offering of jealousy, was in the temple, because he was beaten and handed over for jealousy. The 2-part grain offering was made with the burnt offering as a thanksgiving and covenant with Yahweh. This burnt offering, which is the second offering, was completed on the tree. Yahushua gave all with nothing left. The grain offering, which is the first offering completed in the temple, was to be unleavened. The third day resurrection proved Yahushua to be pure and unleavened. The implements of his offering were as follows. They spat on his face and beat him, and others struck him with the palms of their hands. Then Herod, with his men of war, treated him with contempt and mocked him, arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and set him back to Pilate. Then they said, "Hail, King of the Yahudim," and they struck him with their hands. And Pilate said to him, "Look at this man." I implore you to get the book, and you can read all the details of it. I'm reading through it. I'm not even quoting scriptures. The remaining portion of the grain offering was for the priest. And when Pilate had scourged Yahushua, he delivered him to be executed. Scourging was Pilate's leftover portion of the blood sacrifice. This was 40 lashes on the back of a publicly acknowledged innocent man. Yahushua is seized and rushed to the Kohen Caiaphas with head lowered and a bloody, locked-covered face like a bride's veil. Caiaphas uncovers his head, pushes the hair back to see his bludgeoned face for embarrassment and questioning. Yahushua is stripped for further humiliation, beaten again and reclothed, then adorned with a crown of violet blue hyssop for mocking. The curse of the Amen oath is affirmed as an agreement. And the high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living El. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the son of El. Yahushua said to him, it is as you have said. Yahweh himself places his name on the line to validate the miracle of the ordinance. As such, the Kohen is told to do the unthinkable, that is, to wipe out his name from the temple and mix it with the Mayin Kodesh, holy water, from the laver to make a bitter witness. Consider that on the cedar placard atop Yahushua's head was written by the high priest, this is Yahushua, the king of the Yahudim. He being completely ready by the beatings from the men of war, by the priests lashing, and by 3 hours of stoning from the Passover travelers on their way to Jerusalem, blotted out his name with the stain of his blood. The bride drank the bitter cup of water. After this, Yahushua, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the Torah might be fulfilled, said, I thirst. Now a vessel full of sour wine was sitting there, and they filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on hyssop, and put it onto his mouth. So when Yahushua had received the sour wine, he said, Ze nigmal. Kala, the bride, will die a slow, gruesome death. This is the curse and an oath. His supposed image of a frail, gay-looking, pale man, with drops of blood trickling down the side of his head, ribs, hands, and feet, is a rape and bastardization of the truth of the Shekinah glory of the image of this man. Here is the heart-crunching look of our beloved on the torture stake. The force of his weight was anchored on a single iron nail, hammered between the second and third metatarsal bones of his feet, displacing the tarsal metatarsal joints and stretching the ligature of the cuneiform bones. These are not weight-bearing joints from the plain force upon them. As such, all of our juxtaposed bride's bones that were stacked on these feet bones became disjointed from the ankle to the knee and then to his pelvis. There was no support structure under his feet as some submit. Yahushua bore the burden of his weight. All my bones are out of joint. To relieve the agony of this strain, he had to push down even further on these disfigured, disjointed bones, lifting himself with his thighs. But the strength of Yahushua's thighs were waning away by the minute, as blood circulation was occluded, and the cursed bitter vinegar effects were advancing. The thigh is a symbol of promise and strength. Thus, to it was the attack of the bitter water. A single iron nail was hammered into both hands together. Because non-believers of the name of Yahushua err on this fact, I'll again specify this autonomically. Yahushua's weight was not anchored between the metacarpal fingers, or his weight would have split the hands. It also was not hammered between the ulnar radius space, the wrist, or death would have been almost immediate from bleeding out. The nail was actually wedged painfully within that tight cavity between the capitate and trapezoid carpal bones, the palms. This is the only way that Yahushua could have been hung upon the tree, like a picture frame. The nail pierced the center of his palms, where the names of all of us resided. This anchoring caused the displacement of all his metacarpals. They pierced my hands and my feet. Yahushua's hands and feet were irreversibly contorted and twisted, so much so that if he was taken down from the tree, they would have been rendered as useless. He would have been an invalid. Because Yahushua's hands were nailed together and with waning thigh strength support, His entire rotator cuff joints were out of socket. Both of his scapula became flayed out with no muscle integrity in place. Yahshua was literally painfully hanging from his supinatus tendons and coracomoral ligaments. This resulted in a chest cavity collapse, resulting in minimal spacing in Yahshua's thorax for inhalation of oxygen. Due to decreased chest cavity spacing, exhalation also was incomplete, causing air to enter into our bride's ever-descending stomach and carbon monoxide to build up. Due to the above postural factors, each agonizing weighing breath required an arduous concerted effort of pulling up by the displaced joints of the hands and shoulders ligaments and a pushing up by the displaced joints of the feet, ankles, knees, and pelvis. Yahshua received 40 lashes on his back, pulverizing his flesh. The painful agony of his hoisting and relaxing every few seconds just to breathe, exacerbated his shredded back wounds, further ripping the flesh even more as they scraped up and down on the abrasive almond tree bark. This torturous and inefficient method of breathing caused even more fluid to build up in Yahshua's lungs, which then deposited itself into his stomach, causing it to distend. All of this made breathing increasingly and progressively more difficult by the minute. Eventually, congestive heart failure settled in and the top of his lungs collapsed. My heart is like wax. It has melted within me. Yahshua's upper body was emaciated, with all muscle tone gone. I count all my bones. His stomach bloated with air and fluid, drooping down past his midsection, covering his phallicism, covering his penis. This huge distended midsection made our bride look to be 9 months pregnant and pulled down all the upper torso skin, giving him a look of ecdysis. This is the process of what a snake looks like when he's shedding his skin. That's what his skin looked like. Concurrently, his thighs were wasting away with each push for breath, with no skeletal integrity for support and alignment. Yahshua's body hung like a serpentine with a weighted bulge in its middle. As Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes on him should not perish, but have an everlasting life. See here the contrast of the brass curse and that miraculous healed, but not to annul death, nor entrance into the Holy Land, whereas the bronze curse gave eternal life and entrance into the kingdom. The brass curse was a serpent that hung on a dead tree. The bronze curse was Yahshua, who gave us eternal life. The bride produced profuse perspiration caused by intense suffering and exhaustion. His mouth was dry with extreme thirst. The bitter vinegar added to the dehydration and the bloating. My tongue clings to my jaws. You have brought me to the dust of death. Heart failure, kidney failure ensued, followed by massive organ failure. Yahshua was completely ruddy with blood from crown to toe, which included his teeth and eyes. Remember, his eyes, nose, lips, and jaws were beaten, swollen, and bludgeoned with mighty blows from Herod's men of war. But these bruises would not have resulted in total bloodiness. Yahshua was actually pelted with sharp stones for 3 hours by passers-by on their way to the Pesach. Moses' law demanded stoning of capital crimes. You take him and judge him by your law. You take him and impale him. So meted out was the bride with both the Hebrew and the Roman judgment. There was not even one hair unstained with blood. When he spoke, blood spewed from his mouth. He bore absolutely no resemblance to the image of man. I am a Shawnee, a worm, and no man. His visage was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. So, balled up and writhing in pain, looking like a stained, ruddy vine, Yahushua was a horror to the eyes. Our comprehension cannot put together the reality of the torture state. Even a man with the strength of Samson could not endure the physicality alone of this ordeal. Consider that Yahushua bore this yoke of this on the mere nourishment of a Passover meal to sustain him for 40 hours, followed by 6 hours long of torture on the tree. And remember, before the tree, he had to survive brutal beatings and lashings while being up all night. So what the artist puts on his hands to represent this is a sin. Yahushua juxtaposed himself as the guilty party in our covenant ya'ad with him. I cannot read all this more because I'm running out of time. But for 6 hours the Son of Man was lifted up between heaven and earth. 3 of those hours for our shame, 3 of those hours in total darkness against our shame. I might have to finish this up tomorrow, but if I read on, but to show you, this is what we are atoning for, because we are guilty of it. In John 24 through 7, I'm not going to be able to read from there because of my time. We see that Yahweh took the time to fold the linen cloth that he wore. The linen cloth, which represents righteousness. This was the same linen that Rahab, this is the same, what he wore was the dress that Rahab got married in. I don't have time to go through all that. But guess what? If you read the narrative, he separated the cloth that covered his face. He folded that to the side. Why did he do that? He folded it to the side, and if you read the narrative, they looked at that and saw that, and he left it there. He showed that to prove that he was a virgin. Why did he do that? You go to Deuteronomy 22, 13 to 21. Deuteronomy 22, 13 to 21 to read the laws of sexual morality. So if a bride, when she had sex with her husband on their wedding night, those sheets better be bloody. Because if they're not bloody, that means she played the hoe in her father's house. If they're bloody, that means she was a virgin. So Yahushua laid that cloth that was on his face. They call it the shroud of Jesus. We know that's not. I know my wife and I, we went to Israel and we saw this supposed shroud. But he laid it to the side, put it down to prove that indeed, even though he went through all this hell for us, he was innocent. He was a virgin. He did no wrong. All that he went through was because of us, for us, by us. And it's only through him are we saved. I need no other argument. I'm going to have to finish this up next week. Even though next week we're going to go talk about tabernacles, which is on 10:12. The toughest times are for us. Until then, Yahonathan we here, Yahweh for Christians, Hebrews. Shalom Aleichem, peace be on you.
Forgive our forefathers for what they did. Forgive our forefathers. Breaking the commandments.